Okay. So we got to the 45-minute mark on part 1 of every single Warhammer 40k faction re-explained part 1. So we are going to continue.
Wait. Slaanesh, the Prince of Pleasure, she who thirsts, the god of unspeakable excess, is our 4th Chaos God with the sacred number of 6 adorning their title. Slaanesh is a bit of a tricky one, because with our other 3 Chaos Gods, there was a certain understanding of human emotions and desires, but for Slaanesh, that desire is how they get their power. The words to be used would be decadence, pleasure, perfection, passion, excess, and
she got one boob!
The pursuit of more. The want to do more, experience more, become more. That's what gives Slaanesh their gifts. A lot of people believe that Slaanesh is something that originates with sex, specifically, and it makes sense why they assume that. The visuals of Slaanesh patrons are all very lithe and sexual, but they are also intentionally androgynous to appear attractive to a variety of intrigues.
What's up with the...
However, to think that Slaanesh specifically derives from sex would be mistaken. While it is true that a lot of humanity's actions can relate to getting laid, and Slaanesh is the dark prince of desire, it's more on the lines of feeling an excess of an emotion. It is excessive touch and scent and desire, and a lot of that has to do with sex. That's why it looks like sex, but it's more than just that. A patron of the arts may feed Slaanesh, one that aspires to become the perfect chef or master of their craft, and the sheer pursuit of that alone will feed Slaanesh. Whiplash is Slaanesh's absolute favorite film. Videos where people beat Elden Ring on a dance pad feed Slaanesh.
There are no 2 words in the English language more harmful than good job.
But is there a line?
No, man, no.
This also moves into the concept of feeling.
What's
Sensation
up with the
is a
lobster
majorly
claws?
Slaanesh-coded thing. It might start off feeling good, but then you get to play around a little bit, you know? You play with a little bit of pain. Light pain might not be enough, so you might want more. Or inflicting the pain could be your jam. Music can increase to volumes that may hurt your ears, and even then that might not be enough. More. You must have more. Many of the disciples of Slaanesh carry a demonic form in their lithe grace. The Keeper of Secrets is his chosen envoy, and their movements are a blur of dance and pain with an aura all the more fatal. They dance and sing, but there's always a form of malice behind every action they take. An alluring gaze that will pull you in right before the demonic entity can crush you in that grip. Slaanesh's palace has 6 layers surrounding it, and one of them is the excess of gluttony, where the participant finds themselves in a beautiful banquet full of the most delicious foods imaginable. Tables of delicacies and rivers of wine tempt the user to such a degree that they cannot stop stuffing their face, unaware that the things they are eating are very vaguely familiar meat. If one does not see themselves drowning in the river of wine, they may soon fill their bodies up so much that they cease to function and fall over, becoming part of the banquet themselves. That is one of these 6 layers of Slaanesh's palace. This was the ecstasy that the Eldar civilization indulged in for millennia, and did so at a monumental scale that they created a god from it. Find pleasure in every moment, indulge in every whim, let lesser races feel the burden of their crude lives. We are beyond such concerns or worries. Every power is ours to use, every sensation ours to experience. We are truly masters of the galaxy, and all others exist only to satisfy our curiosities. We have earned our position of power. Let us forever taste the fruits of such achievement. Time itself
this is wild.
Ours to command. We are eternal. With the birth of Slaanesh, the Eldari Empire ceased to be. A catastrophic event so horrible that the warp ripped a hole permanently in our reality, a fissure forever known as the Eye of Terror. With the sudden inhalation of this god's largest breath, the Eldari souls are a currency to be now collected by she who thirsts. Trillions of Eldar died in an instant, Slaanesh gorging on their souls to satisfy his palate. 99.9% of their entire species died, and the rest are doomed to a fate worse than death.
These guys?
For Slaanesh now stakes a claim on each and every Eldar soul. From the moment they pass on, an eternity of torment awaits them. The remaining Eldar devote their entire lives to stopping this eventuality, their dying race so devoted to saving themselves from the Dark Prince, and in doing so have found very creative ways. In the modern world of Warhammer, the craft world Eldar are the main force of Eldar in the galaxy and represent the elf style that many think of when you think elves in space. Fantasy elves in space, not those elves. We'll get to them. A craft world is a monumentally large starship, the size of a continent, that acts as a form of flotilla. During the highest reaches of hedonism, many Eldar saw the demonic writing on the wall and began to try and seek asylum from their own debauchery. Those Eldar left on monumental craft worlds into the far reaches of the galaxy and saved themselves from Slaanesh's awakening. The main thing the craft world Eldar seek is to temper their minds and bodies in a way that will never allow them to slide back into their old ways. The representation they carry is that of a more feudal Japanese motif. Eldar follow paths as they age, the path of the warrior, the seer, the poet, the diplomat, the bone singer, and so on. These paths are a strict code of conduct to hone the heightened Eldar psychology down a school of thought and action. And if it sounds a hell of a lot like Bushido, well, you're damn right. Here's a medal and a soul stone. Don't lose it or an eternity of torment awaits you. Going through these paths will allow you to take up not just a role in Eldar society, but keep your mind clear from the past worries that plagued them. Every Eldar is said to be a psyker, however, very few of them actually utilize their psychic powers for fear of tempting she who thirsts. A large amount of emphasis is also put on ancestors of the Eldar and learning from them the farther you go down a path. This can sometimes be seen by the large variety of jewels adoring the armor of Eldar. Those are called soul stones, the biggest middle finger to Slaanesh they can think of. See, when an Eldar dies, these stones act as a backup.
He looks crazy.
And instead of their souls going to Slaanesh, they are then trapped and stored in this little stone. So when the Eldar say they commune with their ancestors, they mean so very literally, as the spirit and soul of generations before them are stored here. Often, larger structures may contain vast amounts of soul stones, such as the Infinity Circuit in the craft world itself, allowing the souls of the dead to help power their enormous starship. The young do not desire the discipline of the path, but rather their curiosity drives them to try every fruit from the tree. Thus, it is that so many take the path of wandering or the path of damnation in their first years of adulthood. And so, the great tragedy of our kind is played out again and again as the number of our people shrink from generation to generation. These paths, when completed, allow an Eldar to move to the next one, then the next one. However, since this is the grim darkness of the world, many of these paths rely on combat. The Eldar actually had gods at one point: Cain, Vol, Isha, Azaryan, and so on. These gods are aspects of the Eldar pantheon, and while many were killed in Slaanesh's creation, their teachings live on. For some, the strongest devotion to the Eldar gods is to join the Aspect Warriors and embody the wrath of Cain, their god of war. While guardians of the Eldar craft worlds are more akin to a trained militia, the Aspect Warriors embody a particular variant of the path. Each are led by a Phoenix Lord, a name passed down from generations and embodying the souls of prior Phoenix Lords with each new one. The Howling Banshees, led by Jane Czar,
Howling
Fugin and his Fire
Banshees.
Dragons, Baharoth and his Swooping Hawks, or Malgan Ra and his Dark Reapers. Each aspect shrine carries with it the Eldar way of war. Fast, hard-hitting, and incredibly tricksy, for they do not have the numbers to fight in any other way. The Craftworld Eldar show how mangled an empire can be by their own actions. They once ruled the galaxy in an honest, non-hyperbolic way, but in the end, they were bested by themselves, and their most prominent remnants are forced to drift aimlessly through the galaxy, trying to save their species from extinction and resist the temptations of she who thirsts. But for some, the party, it's just beginning.
Wait, so is she who thirsts still a thing? What happened to her? Where is she? What's going on with her? Or is she dead? Is she dead? Is she alive?
Deep within the webway is the city of Kamara. This dark city once existed as a port in the webway that allowed for ease of transport for the Eldar between its various domains. The significance of this city meant that it needed to be a bit more of a neutral territory outside of the jurisdiction of general Eldar law, and therefore it was allowed to self-govern.
I had a blonde moment. Okay. Got it.
This did not go well. The Dark City became the hideaway for all manner of sin. The Eldar race slipped into debauchery on a galactic scale that it birthed a god, and this was the city you went to when that wasn't enough for you. The convenience of being so deep within the webway was that it exists as a blind spot to the horrors of the warp. So while the rest of the Eldar fled the downfall of their species, Kamara kept partying. When Slaanesh was birthed,
for some
they
reason,
were saved
I was
the
thinking
worst of it, thanks to them
Fulgrim
being nice and neatly tucked away inside the
but that
webway.
was the Primarch who
But
fell
only
to
somewhat.
Slaanesh.
The Dark Prince did not have a grip
is
around
Slaanesh.
their
That makes
soul, but the
sense.
tiniest pinky finger, and they were still pulling. But due to their excess hedonism, they found a solution to this problem. If they tormented others, they could temporarily rejuvenate their souls and continue to cheat their inevitable death by placating the Prince of Pleasure. And if they kept this up on the regular, they could effectively become immortal. Thus, the Drukhari were born. Unlike the more stoic elves you see in works of fiction, the Drukhari themselves exist as a sort of analog of the more grim and fiendish elves you find in Norse and European mythology. The Drukhari are soul vampires, but the more basic means to feed are hardly enough to keep them going. This desire to feed is known as the thirst, and to quench it effectively, they have mastered the art of biotechnology and dark sciences to really juice themselves up on the crispy soul sprite from the vending machine called the Galaxy. The majority of Drukhari act as pirates and raiders and slavers. They go into our physical reality and drag people back to Kamara to commit atrocities that go beyond any imaginative torture a human can think of. The Drukhari are organized in various groups throughout the Dark City to accomplish this in a more organized and extremely brutal way. The Cabals act as the main warriors of the city, led by their archons. Witches and succubi act as entertainment for Kamara in gladiatorial arenas, and the flesh-crafting homunculus keep the Drukhari alive and discover ever increasingly more painful ways to torment their ever increasingly large supply of slaves they are brought. The Dark Eldar see the other inhabitants of the galaxy as little more than cattle, livestock that can be brought to bay or slaughtered at any time. Their fodder, however, is not meat and muscle, but the anguish and despair of the weak. The Dark Eldar do indeed drink blood, but also tears, and most—
Wait, you're saying that they are not as bad as Slaanesh? Oh, I don't know. This sounds so much worse.
Sustaining of all, the raw essence of pain, they wring out of their captives. The truth of the matter is that Drukhari sustain themselves on the suffering of others, not just morally, but physically. Kamara is a city rife with backstabbing schemes and murder. It is the worst back alleys of the worst ghettos at the best of times. Nothing is more horrifying to a Drukhari than death, for death will see them in the talons of Slanesh for an eternity of torment. So they do everything they can to stop this. The homunculi covens regrow dead members from pieces of flesh as bargaining chips. The succubi create grisly gladiatorial spectacles that literally rejuvenate the audience members as captives are murdered for sport. To be captured by the Drukhari is one of, if not the worst fate imaginable in the world of Warhammer 40k. In a universe built on war crimes, they are the most debased war crimers of all time. To be tortured and sacrificed in the gladiatorial arenas is a blessing, for you have escaped the fate of being in the
That
flesh
sounds
smith's
worse.
control group, or being turned into a living and breathing piece of furniture for an Archon's quarters. In a cruel twist of fate, a newly born Drukhari does not arrive into this world loving torture. It is something they must grow to love. Grow to appreciate the suffering of other beings
That
in
is
order to survive in the
wild.
world they have been brought into. If they succeed, they become some of the worst monsters in the known galaxy. A dark reflection to the craft worlders and a taste of what Eldar society was like before the fall. If they do not succeed, they must find purchase elsewhere. Often those will join smaller parts of Eldar society like the Exodites or the Harlequins.
No, I'd rather
Exodites
not
believe in a pre-industrial variant
taken
of
by
the
either.
society, often retreating to more lush worlds to ride dinosaurs and live off the land. Prehistoric style that I would normally laugh at if they weren't riding dinosaurs like ballers. The Harlequin dancing troupe are a subsect of Eldar that are more than just a little strange. A carnival of dancing jesters that serve the Eldar laughing god of Kegarok. They arrive never when expected and leave just as quickly. Blurs of light carry their footsteps as they dance their foes into a grave. Combat is just as much of a joke as it is a play on bloody murder. They travel and aid many other Eldar and sometimes even humanity for reasons we can never understand. Perhaps one day we would have, were they not stripped of their army book and folded into the Eldari
They look
Codex.
crazy.
So I suppose
They
it'll
look
have to stay a
crazy.
mystery. Or maybe it was one of Kegarok's master plans to get back at She Who Thirsts and save their species. Who could know? Perhaps it was all a sick and practical joke to
How crazy
Kegarok,
that
and he would
looks.
just find it very funny to watch me fumble the discussion of one human on a tiny blue planet across the galaxy. Oh, speaking of, before the fall of the Eldar, Earth, or Terra as it's called, was in ruin. One man who looks to put the pieces back together. Where did he come from? We don't know. Some say he was the result of early shamans. Some say he is the final old one who escaped their species' genocide. And those that are smartest know.
So is this gonna be like Cadians are mad, right? Isn't that like humans? But that's a planet where they trained people, right? Or is this gonna be like what will end up becoming Space Marines?
The answer is, it doesn't matter. He revealed himself as the Emperor of Mankind, and he was tasked with the most monumental upheaval of humanity possible. The Eldari's warp fluctuations had turned the golden age of humanity into old night. Interstellar travel cut off? Check. An AI uprising? Check. Brand new psychers popping up and not knowing how to handle their powers? Oh, check. Demonic incursions? Check. Thousands of years this occurred, and now the Emperor of Mankind showed himself to put the pieces back together. Unifying Terra under his rule, the Emperor founded the Imperium of man and ruled it with an iron fist. He was the supreme leader and nothing could stand against him. He wished to remove mankind from the yoke of its former failures, and he knew he would be the best leader they could have because he was right. AI banned, religion banned. You did as the Emperor told you, or his Thunder Warriors would put you in your place. That place often being a grave. Now, Terra was thriving, but humanity needed to reclaim its long-lost brethren
So wait, is this
scattered
the
across
Emperor?
stars. But to do so, he needed those that could build him a fleet, truly
Like Father
meant
of the
for
Primarchs Emperor?
reconquering of the galaxy. And so he turned his attention to the red planet of Mars. Mars and Terra were close allies long before the Unification Wars. Mars was the first world terraformed by humanity and became what would ultimately be the first hive world, an epicenter for industry and technology. The Age of Strife did not treat the red planet kindly, however. Mars was cut off from Terra during this time, and the warp storms that ravaged the planet turned it into an absolute nuclear hellscape. Those who were on the surface were turned into your run-of-the-mill mutant if they even survived the bombings they inflicted on themselves, but others were lucky enough to escape beneath the red sands in powerful fallout shelters. These became their generational habitats, but this resulted in extreme reliance on technology and those who could use it. They began to view the technology keeping them alive less as a technological advancement and more of a divine intervention, with those skilled in it as priests. The Martians began to worship the power of the machine, and this resulted in the formation of the cult Mechanicus, the belief in a holy trinity known as the Three-in-One. The machine god serving as the spirit who gave rise to all technologies known, the motive force,
Terminator.
the deity that gives all life its ability to live, and the Omnissiah, a physical manifestation of the machine god itself. This belief began to manifest in them physically as well.
Wild.
What were once humans began to really mess around with the character creator options, and this tech obsession made them view instances of flesh to be weak and spend their lives removing what makes them human and replacing it with mechanical augments.
That's why they're not
Robotic limbs,
upgrading
glowing
anything,
eyes,
because like they
mechadendrite
can't
arms. What was once a mass of flesh now looks like the back
learn
of a router.
new
And the
things.
oldest members of the Mechanicus no longer even look slightly human. In addition to this, cloaked over all of their mechanical appendages are robes that reflect the color of their homeworld, the red.
So would this be heretic, right? This would be heretic.
Robes of the Mechanicus. The Cult Mechanicum, now the Adeptus Mechanicus, create a fascinating combination of cultures all birthed into one. Basically,
they're not
techno-zealot monks. Organic life is the machine god's greatest accomplishment within the scope of the great work. All praise he who is three-in-one. By giving us life.
All right. Oh my gosh. This is so much to remember. Okay, so because of these guys, they can't. So they're not heretics because they haven't pushed the line, but because they provide, they're needed.
Within an organic shell, he presents us with the means and opportunity to improve upon physicality, as is his divine plan. He grants us complex weakness so we might learn metallic strength and ascend to his level of machinic perfection. The Emperor's arrival to Mars was very much a walking in with the pizzas while the room is on fire moment, but to the Mechanicum, they saw his arrival as confirmation of their belief. They took one look at the glowing golden entity that showed up on their doorstep and were like, that's him. That's the guy. In the kind brightness of the far past, there was no war. Our galaxy was, for a long time, fairly empty and quiet.
My gosh.
The first known species to appear during this time.
My cat! Okay, how far did we get? We got past here. Imperium of Man. Adeptus Mechanicus. Okay. Got there. I think it was right about here. She just walked on the keyboard and just told. Right, I think we were talking about that last Wednesday about how, like, nothing new is made. It has to be, like, refurbished old stuff, right? Okay, we were about here. Okay. I'm sorry.
Entity that showed up on their doorstep and were like, that's him. That's the guy right there. And they immediately accepted him as the Omnissiah. Obviously, showing up and being called Machine Jesus shortly after wiping out all instances of non-Machine Jesus a little bit beforehand is an instance of capital H heresy. But the Emperor saw the bigger picture. Were they strange with how they rubbed unguents on themselves, burned incense, and prayed to machines for them to work? Sure, but that's a lot of production right there. So the Emperor devised the Treaty of Olympus Mons, a unifying agreement between Terra and Mars. And this union would be permanently etched into the Aquila of the Imperium as the two-headed eagle. One head for Terra, the other for Mars. The forces of the Emperor would be supplied with all the technology and weapons they needed to reunite the scattered remnants of humanity under one banner. And the Mechanicum of Mars would be able to keep doing what they were doing religiously and scientifically so long as they kept up their tithes. This tithe meant total quality control over all technology in the Imperium. Is it a big spaceship? AdMech take care of that. Tanks? AdMech take care of that. The literal bullets in a gun? You guessed it. But unlike the factories of today, the forged worlds of Mars and the creations of the Mechanicum are a bit of a different experience altogether. Instead of a factory on a random given world, the entirety of the planet's surface is dedicated to manufacturing. But that's a little tricky, isn't it? Considering that the usage of silica animus, or AI, is a big no-no, and basically the largest affront to their divine machine god possible. Fortunately, there's a really neat alternative that they've come up with, and that's called a servitor. Incredible devices that can do anything from manufacturing, maintenance, basic door operation, even just float around like a helpful little drone. It's an extremely easy process too. All you need to do is take a human who is dying or preferably an enemy of the state, most likely that one, and lobotomize them. And then reprogram their brains to do exactly what they tell you. They even got little baby versions of them. Yay! So now you can rest easy knowing that the entirety of the Imperium, because they outlaw AI and learning new tech is heresy, is run on lobotomized slaves. Whether they deserve it or not is unimportant, and whether they can still keep their consciousness trapped in their own minds is another thing entirely.
Is showing.
An excerpt from the Servitor Creation Factories. Naked human beings were standing in a switch-packed line between high fences. The manufactorum produced servitors, but it was more akin to an abattoir than a workshop. Every surface was easily cleanable. Servitors with spray units surgically attached to their backs prowled about, hosing filth from slit drains set into the perfectly smooth, slanted floors. As the line slowly advanced, the people were passed through various scanning devices, most of them mounted in ugly, functional arches that let out a constant series of acceptance chimes. Occasionally, one would let out an angry blare, and the indicator lumens would flash red. The rejected person was then swallowed up by a trapdoor opening beneath their feet. From these pits wafted a hideous stench and the grinding sounds of industrial mincers. One rejected man grabbed onto the lip and hung there, arms and hands bloodied, shouting a stream of defiant profanities. Guards lined the grating either side of him and shocked him until he fell. The adepts wouldn't even waste bullets.
They just cattle prodded him?
The trapdoor flipped up, and the next terrified person was ushered forward. Violent metal arms snatched them up and spread-eagled them in the air, and a servitor shearer shaved them all over. At another, they were subjected to a high-pressure counterseptic wash whose chemical stink made me choke from 100 feet away. More scanners, more rejects winnowed out. Machines forcibly dressed them in a heavy, rubberized garment common to all monotask servitors. These were saggy on them, all one size, until another process shrank them to fit their bodies, where metal cuffs, sockets, and collars bit into vulnerable flesh. The last few prayers gave way to screams at that point, and even the most stoic shouted in pain. They were ushered over a floor, buzzing with power that made them shriek with every footstep. "What's that for?" I asked. "Follicular inhibitor, to stop their hair from growing," he said. "Freaking sweet, Lois!" As for their scientific pursuits, the Mechanicum believe in the preservation of knowledge above all, and the quest to expand it. However, as opposed to just innovating and inventing on their own with their vast technological know-how, they believe that it is a form of tech heresy. You see, because of their religious viewpoints on technology itself, they believe that the instruction booklet itself is just as holy as the Lego set it builds, and to innovate on that without the proper written knowledge is to go against the divine word of the machine god itself. All knowledge is already in the universe, you simply need to rediscovering it and attempting to invent something to improve upon divinity is very heretical. Prior to the Age of Strife, humanity was able to populate the stars with devices known as Standard Template Constructs, or STCs. These devices were, as far as we know, supercomputers with the ability to pull up and detail how to create literally anything a startup colony would need. Essentially, they were devices with the entirety of human technological know-how so that you could make a home away from home. The Mechanicum will not make anything without an STC. Quite literally nothing, because this is the knowledge they seek, and that knowledge is divine. One time, scouts of the Imperial Guard found a functioning STC that provided the schematics on a knife that happened to be a bit lighter and a bit sharper than most other knives. These knives were adopted by 30 Space Marine chapters and were one of the most advanced discoveries of the century. This discovery was so significant that they were each awarded a planet for finding this.
A
planet for a machine that taught them how to make knives. Due to their religious organization, you can probably guess the Mechanicum are organized in a feudal structure, with the highest individuals in power being a part of the priesthood. Cream of the crop being the fabricator general of Mars.
That guy looks crazy!
Who serves as a high lord of Terra, but also oversees the entirety of the Mechanicum below. Below them are tech priests that oversee the cult for
Chat, you guys thought my wires were bad behind my PC? That guy is an IT nightmare. Oh my goodness.
The quest of knowledge and other more straightforward theocracy. Forge worlds tend to operate slightly more independently, what can cause some power struggles within the Mechanicum, because, you know, despite them all being weird robots, they love being given praise. And despite being the manufacturing end of the Imperium, they do actually have their own military forces. They have the Skitarii Private Army and all their various 1920s Martian-style mechanisms like Doom Crawlers, Castellan robots, and of course, the Titan Legions, because nothing is cooler than a robot that towers over buildings. Ultimately, their very dogmatic view on technology as a whole has resulted in any innovation becoming absent, thus causing the Imperium to stagnate as a whole. The lack of ambition to create anything new and the wholesale murder of anyone who even tries leads to things becoming derelict. I grow weary of this flesh I was born into, strangely disgusted by its nature. I crave only the cold, clean certainty of steel and silicon, that I might become one with the blessed machine. I do not expect you to understand, you who cling to your flesh as if it were immortal, seeking only to preserve it, to protect it. One day you will see the folly of your ways, and then no doubt you will come begging to my order to preserve you. After the groundwork had been set unification-wise, it was time to start getting things together for the Emperor's great crusade across the stars to bring humanity under one banner. The Thunder Warriors were a perfect fighting force for unifying Terra and Luna, but the galaxy was a whole different thing. You see, these warriors weren't soldiers in the eyes of the Emperor. They were tools, extremely blunt tools used for the fast conquest of Terra. As the Emperor was concerned, the tools you use at home aren't the same ones you take on a road trip. So the Emperor rid himself of his tools in the exact manner you think he did, and he went forward to crafting a brand new tool. one more mobile, more efficient, and ready for his next era of conquest. They shall be my finest warriors, these men who give of themselves to me. Like clay, I shall mold them, and in the furnace of war forge them. They will be of iron will and steely muscle. In great armor shall I clad them, and with the mightiest guns will they be armed. They will be untouched by plague or disease. No sickness will blight them.
Fist
They
right
will have
there?
tactics, strategies, and machines so that no foe can best them in battle. They will be my bulwark against the terror. They are the defenders of humanity. They are my soul.
Let's go.
And they shall know no fear. The vastness of the Milky Way galaxy meant that the Emperor needed assistance bringing everyone back to the fold. And who better to do this than himself? But since the technology to be in many places at once does not exist anymore, the Emperor decided that it was time to become a dad, the same way Geppetto did, and with far less care. It is not my son, Archon. None of them are. They are warlords, generals, tools bred to serve a purpose, just as legions were bred to serve a purpose. What a dad. The Primarch
What a
Project was
dad.
started to create charismatic and unique leaders in the Imperial military. The diversity of these eventual leaders meant that each one could be specialized for certain
Like a horse.
circumstances across the galaxy. Depending on the type of conflict, one leader might be better than the other. So instead of forcing one leader to acclimate to a situation directly, it would be better to send a specialized leader and force to handle it. In order to do this, the Emperor used his genetic know-how and maybe a little bit of that forbidden stuff to create these genetically perfect gene fathers that had the ability to serve as his analog directly, and also serve as the leaders of the respective Space Marine
These are
legions.
the
All
Primarchs, right?
all 18, that's right, all 19 of his sons were meant to be directly molded by the Emperor himself, despite their genetic differences. And they go as follows in order: Lionel Johnson, Fulgrim, Percherabo, Jagatai Khan, Lehman Russ, Rogel Dorn, Conrad Kurz,
Daddy
Sigwinus,
Dorn!
Ferris Manus, Angron, Robute Gilliman, Mortarion, Magnus the Red, Horus Lupercal, Lorgar Aurelian, Vulcan, Corvus Corax, and Alfarius and Omegon. His sons, finalized and crafted to be the warriors he needed them to be, were complete. But he may have decided to do a bit of dabbling with things he shouldn't have, and paid a price. Before the Primarchs were ready to go, an intervention by the gods of chaos prevented his plan from being completed as intended. Though the sources vary, the ultimate result of the Chaos God intervention was that all of the Emperor's tools were scattered throughout the galaxy at unknown places and times. Each one of his sons ended up in a completely different world, and instead of being able to directly influence their upbringing, these children were instead forced to experience the unique nature of their respective homeworlds. Some had a great time and lived in general luxury. Others, not so much. Despite his closest advisor, Malkador the Sigillite, saying, "All right, Chief, let's try this one again," the Emperor sensed each of his sons were still very much alive. And one of the primary objectives of the Great Crusade shifted to reclaiming each of his sons so they could take command of their specific Space Marine legions.
He was
and
trying to be a
carry
good
out his
dad.
will. These
tried.
original Space Marine legions that were created alongside their Primarchs go in order: the Dark Angels, Emperor's Children, Iron Warriors, White Stars, Space Wolves, Imperial Fists, Night Lords, Blood Angels, Iron Hands, World Eaters, Ultramarines, Death Guard, whoosh, Thousand Sons, Luna Wolves, eventually Sons of Horus, the Word Bearers, Salamanders, Raven Guard, and the Alpha Legion. Space Marines, unlike their gene fathers, the Primarchs, are not made in a vat. There is a process to recruit more members from humanity itself, which seems a bit strange considering how massive a Space Marine is compared to a normal man, but don't forget, the Emperor is really good with genetics. Less good with anesthetic, however. These prospects are recruited across humanity from various reasons and methods, and are generally killed during that process. But sometimes they aren't, and they are able to go through more and more of the actual training to assess certain traits that are important and relevant to being a Space Marine. Most of the time, the common factor is a pure, unrelenting willingness to kill the enemies of the Imperium. After going through psychological screening, the prospect,
This is like
now
the
called a
initiate
neophyte,
part, right?
goes under the knife to become a Space Marine. And here is a quick list of all the cool new stuff they get genuinely shoved into their bodies. A secondary heart, an organ that makes your bones grow, an organ that makes your muscles big, an implant that makes your blood stronger, a little organ that turns your white blood cells into super white blood cells, a brain implant that allows you to sleep while being awake, a pre-stomach that allows you to digest literally anything, a spinal implant that allows you to absorb the genetic memories of what you eat, bigger and better lungs that can let you breathe underwater, an implant that gives you stronger eyes, new ears that keep you from being dizzy, a brain implant that lets you go into suspended animation if you're in a bad shape, skin that acts like transition glasses, I almost got it in one take, a brand new kidney, the ability to taste the air and find enemies like a bloodhound, a special coating on your skin that allows you to be protected in space, the ability to spit acid, a gland that allows you to absorb the unique genetic makeup from the gene seed in the first place, and a straight up carapace that allows the Space Marine to interface with their power armor directly. Quite often, these are put inside of you at dubious levels of mental alertness and dubious levels of anesthetic. After a more generalized indoctrination into the faith of the Imperium and a bit more training and other important manners, they can finally be welcomed as a fully fledged Space Marine. A Space Marine is quite literally a walking tank that is armed to the teeth. Two of the more iconic weapons held by a Space Marine are their bolt gun, which fires explosive shells the size of soda cans, and a chain sword, which is... The Space Marine is clad in a colorful carapace known as power armor, crafted from extremely heavy and durable ceramite. The power armor of a Space Marine protects him from any terrors he may face, be it the void of space itself to an inhospitable atmosphere. This armor
literally
almost
insanity.
biologically with an already massive physique makes the Space Marine an almost unstoppable fighting force. And hell, if the armor doesn't protect them enough, they can always become a walking coffin like the dreadnoughts of the chapters are. What truly adds to it all, however, is the sheer difference in some of them. While a Space Marine in its own right is an indoctrinated freight train on legs, how they act
How
can be
dope
quite
he
different from
looks.
chapter to chapter. The gene seed of a Primarch is not just helping them become big and strong, but allows them to gain certain traits from their forefathers. Everything from how they think to even slightly adjusting their physical appearance once it's been implanted, the gene seed can be the personality of an entire Space Marine. Take the Salamanders, for example. Salamanders have a predisposition to fire as a whole, and tend to be extremely large due to the size of their Primarch, Vulcan, and his enormous stature. Whereas someone like Sanguinius, Primarch of the Blood Angels, share more vampiric features and more angel-like qualities. A gene seed is not just aspects of the Primarchs, but they are also flaws too. Magnus the Red and his 1,000 Sons underwent something known as the Flesh Change, a horrifying mutation that, while it made them strong psychers, would affect their bodies so terribly that they would mutate away from humanity. Where other factions have inspiration for their culture from our real world, like the feudal Japanese of the Eldar or Egyptian style the Necrons, each Space Marine chapter themselves carry an inspiration. The White Scars are motorcycle riding Mongolian fighters. The Space Wolves are Norse Vikings. The Dark Angels are Knights of the Round Table, and so on. This moves into their fighting style, and truthfully, there is no end to the characters and options when it comes to the Space Marines. Space Marines are the main symbol you see, and while many of them can be simply indoctrinated warriors who only care about conflict and can be quite boring, then you meet Dante, or Bjorn, or Argel Tal, or Karn, or Lucius, or Erebus. And then you discover the wealth of these characters and tools of war you can have. For 1,100 years, I have
There's
fought
so
and I have
much.
seen the darkness in our galaxy. I have seen the vileness of the alien and the heresy of the mutant. I have witnessed the sin of possession, and I have seen all the evil that the galaxy harbors, and I have slain all whose presence defiles the Emperor. I have seen what you will see. I have fought what you must fight, and I have slain what you must slay. So fear not and be proud, for we are the sons of Sanguinius, the protectors of mankind. We are indeed the angels of death. Despite being the poster children for Warhammer 40k as a whole, the presence of a Space Marine is a rare sight for the countless trillions of humans across the galaxy. Seeing one of these monstrosities is like seeing something akin to an angel sent by the Emperor himself. These angels of death are the essential fighting force to bring humanity back under the unified banner of the Imperium. Yet ultimately, the Space Marines are individuals torn from their families and conscripted to genetic modification and lifelong service for the dying Imperium. And though they are held in an almost holy light, most believe they are above and beyond the people they are designed to serve. Once designed as the protectors of humanity, they seldom view humanity as something worth saving, to the extent that it is a tiny, minute rarity, though not unheard of, for a Space Marine to put a normal citizen above them in any way. For most Space Marines and even their Primarchs, they are only here to do a job. They are there to kill the enemies of humanity, and I would be remiss if I didn't add at least one more of my favorite quotes to the tail end of this section. "The time for speeches is done," said Rogel Dorn. "The first great test is here. My order to you all is simple, yet heed it well, and exert yourselves to see it done. They are coming. Kill them all." While the Space Marines are the spearhead of the Imperium's Great Crusade and also a major player in its warfare, there is a significant amount of importance that must be taken on their transport.
Titus.
What sci-fi universe would be complete without its navy? When you think of the navy or ships on the open sea, you think of something that is sleek, something mobile, and something pretty big. For perspective, the longest self-propelled ship in history was the TTC Wise Giant, an oil tanker that was about 458 meters long or over about 1,500 feet. This right here is child's play in the world of 40k ships. A ship that is considered to be an escort vessel in the Imperium is about 3 times the size of a Sea-Wise Giant.
City.
And the size of the ships only go up from there. Your most common ships are the cruisers. The light cruiser tends to average at about 2 kilometers long, or just over a mile in length, where the Dictator class cruisers can be over 3 kilometers or 2 miles in length. The largest ships are your battleships, and they are tremendous. We're talking 5-mile long, half a mile high monstrosities that look like gigantic Gothic cathedrals and filled to the brim.
Those look awesome, though.
And not
Look how
only
cool
are they
they
filled
look.
with weapons, but they are also jam-packed with crewmen. Battleships tend to, on average, carry a crew between several thousand to several million, and they need every single one of those members because we don't have advanced technology for other things to pilot themselves or control themselves in a meaningful way because there's no AI. A lot of this stuff has to be done manually. Even the reloading of those giant batteries is a form of manual labor. And, of course, generally speaking, gliding through the stars is a very slow way to do things. And let's be honest, there can't be a science fiction setting without some form of hyperspace travel. This form of travel in 40k is less like going to Plaid in Spaceballs and more like going into Davy Jones' zipper dimension in SpongeBob.
Oh, now what? I suppose you're gonna show me. Oh, gee, that's very nice. Oh, what is this? Some kind of magic act?
This is because it utilizes the immaterial warp to do so. Warp travel is handled by a navigator, which is an abhuman. It's a mutated human, don't worry about it. And they have a gene that gives them a third eye and the ability to help steer the ship through the warp, which, as we know, is hell itself and unreality. Now, this might sound exceptionally dangerous, and that's because it is. Now, the ship does have protection in the form of a Geller field, though. Originally, I assumed the Geller field is what you think it is, a large force field stopping all manner of horrible things, like demons from the warp tearing apart your ship. How wrong I was, though. So space travel through the warp basically involves riding on the Sea of Souls. Hell is real and you can surf on it. So you allow the current to carry you and the navigator to direct. But how can a current of souls and unreality carry you when it doesn't obey the laws of physics, time, or, again, reality? What a Geller field is not a force field.
So there's one warp, right? Not multiple warps, just one warp, and we are just surfing in hell on the souls of those who have fallen. Nice. All right. Got it.
but a comatose Imperial psyker dreaming of reality. It is not a bubble. It is a force of reality being projected by mutant Sleeping Beauty to counteract the unreality of the warp that you can then surf on. This,
No,
of course,
yes.
is
But
not
no,
a
but
foolproof
yes.
method of travel, and Geller fields can and do collapse fairly regularly. Being subjected to the warp itself without this Geller field is a terrifying prospect. In the best case scenario, your ship will be torn to shreds, but there are countless instances of ships being thrown out of the warp randomly throughout time itself. You leave for a 2-day mission and you come back 90 years in the past. Maybe you feel like you're lost in the warp for a century and it's only been 45 minutes. And that is only if the waves of souls don't rip your ship apart or have demons arrive on it to do unspeakable things to the crew. The Imperial Navy is an astronomically powerful force for the Imperium because the sheer volume of ships and guns on those ships create firepower that can sunder planets. This is all juxtaposed with the sheer backwater nature of these ships. While they are manned by crews of zealots, they are also operated with such a backwater tech, it completely confuses the reader. You see the long batteries of portside cannons that the ship has, and remember that AI is heresy in this world and that all the mechanics are utilized by lobotomized slaves. So how do they load these? Well, they have gun gangs, massive gangs of hundreds of people manually loading these cannons. These are genuine gun loader gangs that get into gang wars and squabbles. On the ship's bridge, you may find the captain himself hardwired directly into the ship's chair permanently to control it the best they can. Giant screens of hololith data fill the room, and sensors across the ship are just as likely to tell you information as a serf running up to you with a scroll of parchment is. You reach to a microphone to shout orders down a hallway as paper readouts tell you information of the enemy, and holy sigils and candlelit incense burners gleam your next move. While the is not a specific faction of
All right. I think we're going to stop right there because I think that's the next one. We did a huge chunk. We did a couple huge chunks. So we're on the Imperial Navy. We need to remember that. Oh